boy named Henry is living alone with his mother, Adele, after his father left them for another family. His father, Gerald, tries to convince Henry to live with him, but the boy refuses to subscribe, leave his mother, who has gotten depressed after the divorce. To ease her pain, Henry would take care of his mom and do some chores for her, and take her on a date. However, Adele still couldn't help but get depressed and lonely. One day, while the two are in a local store, a wounded staff named Frank approaches Henry and asks if they could give him a ride. The boy brings him to his mother, and Adele is hesitant to help him. However, when Frank holds her son, as if threatening to hurt him, she gets scared and agrees to help. Frank asks if they can take him to their house so he can rest for just a few moments. When they arrive, Adele sneaks a knife into her pocket in case she needs it. Frank then reveals that he escaped from prison by jumping from the second floor of a hospital. He assures them that he won't hurt them and promises to leave the next morning if a train passes by. They later see the news about Frank's escape and discover that he served 18 years in prison for murder. Henry is worried that they might get in trouble for hiding a fugitive. Adele reassures him that as long as Frank remained hidden for a few hours and leaves, there shouldn't be any problems. Frank is also concerned that he put them in risk, so to make sure that they won't get in trouble, he has to tie Adele up so that it would look like he kidnapped her. After tying her up, Frank proceeds to prepare them lunch, and as he later feeds Adele, she begins to feel differently about him. When night comes, Frank unties her, and everyone goes to sleep, except for Henry, who is still cautious. The boys are having a conversation during breakfast when Adele comes over carrying the rope. Frank tells her that it is no longer necessary since he will be leaving soon. However, Adele tells him it's holiday weekend, so there will be no trains available. Frank starts doing household chores like cleaning the floor, changing the car's oil, and repairing the stairs and furnace. He also teaches Henry how to play baseball, something his father never taught him. While Adele is sewing Frank's pants, a neighbor comes over to give them some peaches. Henry tells him that his mother is not home, and the neighbor says she shouldn't be leaving him alone because there's a fugitive on the loose. After the man left, Frank says they should make pies out of those peaches. He teaches Adele and Henry how to make them, and as the three of them work on the pie, Henry notices that Frank is getting too close to his mother. While they are eating, Frank gently places his hand around Adele's waist, and she in turn leans closer, resting her head on his chest. A police car passes by, and Frank decides that he should leave already. However, Adele tells him to wait until his stitch is fully healed, and Henry agrees to it. The fugitive now sleeps together with his mom, and he can hear them making love in the next room. Frank continues doing things that a father would do in the house, and slowly Adele's smile starts coming back. He one day sent Henry to pick up groceries, and there the boy meets a girl named Eleanor, who recently moved into their neighborhood. When he arrives home, Henry forgets to lock the door, and moments later, their neighbor Emily enters. Henry panics and hurriedly runs to his mother. Emily is asking if they could look after her son Barry because she has an emergency at. Adele is hesitant, but the neighbor begs her, so she eventually agrees. Since Barry can barely talk, Frank comes out and lets the kids see him. He brings him in the backyard, where they play baseball together. After a long time, their home is finally filled with smiles, as both Adele and Henry found the man they've been longing for. That evening, while everyone is in the living room, the news flashes about the fugitive on the loose. Moments later, Emily arrives, and Barry tries to tell his mother about Frank, who is on the TV, but she wouldn't listen. Later that night, Henry overhears Frank and his mother talk about running away, and Adele says her husband would not allow her to take Henry away, which meant that she might have to leave her son. The next day, they asked Henry to go to the library and research whether Canada is a good place to move there. The boy sees Eleanor again, and she shares that she was sent away by her mother so she can fool around with her new boyfriend. Henry shares similar sentiment, and though he believes they will not leave him, Eleanor says otherwise. She advises him to find a way to get rid of his mother's boyfriend, or he might end up abandoned like her. Henry returns home sad, and he notices a newspaper about the $10,000 reward for anyone who can tell where the fugitive is. That evening, Henry's father, Gerald, takes him out for dinner with his new family. They talk about puberty and how it's difficult not having a man around the house. Henry implies that there is one, and Gerald says he wants to meet him someday when he arrives home. Adele tells him about their plan to move to Canada. Henry cries, as he thought that they are going to leave him, but his mother tells him that they are all going together. They start packing up the next day, and Henry later goes out to meet Eleanor. He tells her that they are leaving tomorrow, and Eleanor wonders why will they leave on the first day of school. That's when she deduces that his mother's boyfriend is the fugitive, and they are on the run. Eleanor tells him that they might end up like Bonnie and Clyde, who were gunned down while running away. She kisses Henry and says that it's sad that they're leaving just as they started dating back at the house. Adele is getting worried about Frank's worsening wound, so she decides to go. and buy medicine. Frank notices her anxiety, so he stops the car and talks with her. That's when she starts to share that, after Henry was born, she had 3 miscarriages, and the 4th one was stillborn tuck. The doctor says she could no longer have a child, which plunged her into depression, a condition that worsened after Gerald left her. She tells Frank that she can't give him a family, but Frank says she already has Frank used to serve in the military. He was married, and they have a son, but one day, when he arrives from a mission, he notices a change in his wife's behavior. She often goes out and leaves Frank alone with her son. He follows her one night to a pub and sees her hanging out with another man. Frank asked if her son was his, and the wife just laughs at him. He gets furious and accidentally pushed her, causing her to die. Frank also finds out that his wife let the baby drown in the bathtub. As they are preparing to leave, Henry leaves a goodbye letter to his father while walking home. A police officer offers to give him a ride, and to avoid suspicion, Henry agrees. Adele is aghast to see the police accompanying her son. The officer notices their things in the car, so he offers to help them too. Move their things while Frank is just in the room hiding. The officer later leaves, and Frank says they have to leave immediately. Adele and Henry go to the bank to withdraw their money, and while Frank is removing the lights, Emily brings in food to thank Adele for looking after her son. Frank realizes by then that he is in jeopardy. He takes the food, and the neighbor leaves. Adele and Henry arrive home, and moments later, they hear the police siren from the distance. Adele says that they should leave already, but Frank knows it's too late. He proceeds with his initial plan to remove Henry and Adele from potential involvement by making it look like they kidnapped them. After tying them up on the chair, Frank goes out of the house to surrender, while the two are crying as the police are rescuing them. When they heard that Frank was charged with kidnapping Adele, and Henry hurries to tell the prosecutors that Frank didn't hurt them and was actually a good man. However, the prosecutor warns that harboring a fugitive is a crime, and she could lose her custody of Henry. Frank is sentenced to another 25 years in prison for the escape and kidnapping, and Adele was not able to visit him because he was in solitary confinement. She fell into depression again, and she eventually relinquished her custody of Henry to Gerald. By his junior year, Henry is able to use everything that Frank has taught him, like fixing the car, playing baseball, and baking a pie for his mother. Years later, Henry now has his own bakery. Ted specializes in handmade pie that was taught to him by Frank. One day, he receives a letter from him saying that he found out about his bakery in an article, and he is proud of what he has become. Frank also mentions that he would soon be released, and he promises that when he gets out, Adele would no longer feel sadness upon his release. Frank is greeted by